This is CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast with Business Solutions MVPs Joel Lindstrom, George Zabinski, and Sean, the CRM Hobbit, Tabor. This episode is sponsored by Anaugic. Anaugic is a leading Microsoft Gold Dynamics CRM ISV delivering best-in-class Dynamics 365 customer engagement solutions, as well as cost-effective and high-quality offshore Dynamics CRM programming services. Anaugic's innovative solution portfolio includes Maplytics, a premier map visualization, routing, and geo-analytics app for Dynamics 365 customer engagement. AnowLink offers seamless integration between QuickBooks and Dynamics 365 customer engagement, and other productivity apps like Adoption Monitor, Click to Clone, and Click to Export. We thank Anaugic for sponsoring CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. Well, George, you've been away for a while.
Yes,
Where have you
been? Good to be back on dry land, so to speak, in the land of hot summer. I just came back. We were skiing in Japan, which not a lot of people know that Japan has one of the best snows ever. The place we go to, it's like medieval village. It gets on average 12 to 14 meters of snow. What is it, like 40 feet or something, or 50 feet? So it's.
Yeah, I don't think of Japan as a skiing country, but that's interesting.
But think about, they had 2 Winter Olympics, right? They had Sapporo, and then we just chilled out. On the way back, we took a couple days detour through Singapore, which is one of our favorite cities/countries. And I couldn't help myself but to reflect on what Singapore as a country achieved in 50 years, right? They recently celebrated 50 years of independence, and it's brilliant. Like, everything works. It's a clean, safe environment, but everyone knows that it comes with some, draconian laws and stuff like this for littering, for hooliganism, and all this sort of stuff.
You can get caned, right?
You do get caned. Most recent episode was it was a few years back. I think from memory, like 2 or 3 years back. It was a public case where 3 American students got a bit rowdy and vandalized a car or 2, like spray paint or something like this, right? They were found virtually instantly because there's so many cameras in Singapore, and they feed into a Facebook page, and public can be asked for help to identify people, and it's kind of, it just worked. You don't see police around. That's the spooky part, right? So, and they were found, and they were sentenced something like 10 canes and 3 months jail, and I think council tried to intervene, and they managed to sort of get rid of 3 months of jail, but they still got caned. And trust me, 10 canes is basically, it will cripple you. So it's quite severe punishment. So if not crippled, you will remember it for a long, long time. But my point is, you know that we have the tag on CRM Tip of the Day, Speis, Rutten, Laufen, basically corporal punishment, which
not capital punishment,
not capital
punishment,
corporal, right? Yeah. Is it corporal?
We don't kill you.
Yeah.
Corporal, yeah, that's
corporal
like
punishment. It's going through running the gauntlet, right? So, and I've been a big fan of kind of discipline developers into good habits, right? So, and look at the Singapore as one of the particular cases where they put Speis, Rutten, Laufen into everyday laws, right? So, what they achieved in 50 years is amazing. So, I'm saying that works, and Microsoft Dynamics been around for 15 or 17 years, probably conceived way before then. And we nowhere near Singapore effectiveness, I would say. And not specific to Microsoft, right? It's software in general, and Salesforce, I reckon, would suffer from the same problem as new fields. But what I'm saying, the very measured dose of corporal punishment will introduce good habits and will teach people to, to apply those good habits. So...
Are you suggesting corporal punishment for developers on the Dynamics team?
I've been suggesting this from day one. It's like, just as I said, go and find tag Spice Root and Laughing on CRM Tip of the Day. You'll see the bad habits. I reckon any development team can benefit from measured dose of corporal punishment. So, anyway, yeah.
Well, sometimes that happens, like when the team that is developing a product that gets not happen, like the Windows Phone team, they'll get laid off.
Well, you can say, can you, corporal punishment? It's a discrete measure, right? Getting laid off, it's not a discrete measure. It's basically binary. You either laid off or you're not. Can you be like? In the movies when they put detectives on leave, when they do something naughty, they say you relieved of your duties without pay for 2 weeks or whatever, right? So developer done something, get out of here, go stand in the corner, think about your behavior.
You have to manage the email router for 2 months.
Yeah, but. Speaking of all these, indiscretions that team is guilty of, what's the deal with the marketing preview? Is it public? Is it private?
The deal is that we're not. The deal is we can't talk about it, which this was confusing. And I guess talking about it isn't breaking the NDAs, but basically it was originally previewed as part of Business Edition, and then they said NDA is lifted. So people wrote a bunch of blog posts. MVPs did, and then Business Edition didn't happen, and so after that it went back into NDA in private preview. Couldn't talk about that. Now they're having a public preview, but it's a limited public preview. And so last week, some people posted some details about it, and those posts disappeared. There were also some YouTube videos a few weeks ago that. Yeah.
When you say posts I still disappeared, and then the next thing you know, people disappeared.
They were asked to come down. It's somebody. My colleague from the UK, Chris Huntingford, the tattooed CRM guy, was comparing it to Fight Club. The first rule of the marketing preview is you don't talk about.
But what happens is this is the huge disadvantage of being under NDA. The situations like this, right? Because if someone walks into a room and say, "Hey, people, what I'm just about to tell you is NDA." Right? Because you and I and other MVPs and some other people, they signed NDA, right? So immediately when someone says something is under NDA, we're bound by it. We can't talk about it. We can't do anything because we're risking losing our status and so on and so forth. And it's been known to happen in the past. So we're not going to risk it. But if someone is present in the room who is not governed by NDA, right? And someone says, "Oh, what I'm just about to tell you is NDA." So that person can say, "Well, great. I'm just go ahead and blog about it afterwards," right? So if someone stumbles across of this marketing page by accident, this private public preview, because the page is public. So if someone stumbles across by accident and goes ahead and provisions this preview, are they bound by it? What? This is annoying.
Yeah, no, that's the crazy thing is the documentation is on the doc site. You could search through it, and it's basically public documentation. But there's another reason why specifically to the marketing preview I wouldn't spend a lot of time talking or writing blog posts about it, and that's because having gone through it, again, not revealing any specifics, it's been a lot more kind of how the sausage is made than what the end sausage is going to look like. And there's going to be significant changes, is my suspicion. And so anything you write about it is going to be premature. It's kind of like, and we'll talk about a little bit later, the Cortana preview that is now not happening. If you had invested your energy into writing blog posts, or if we had podcast episodes about it, now we would have egg on our face because it's something that's not going to happen. And it's interesting to talk about how, why did this not happen, or why did Business Edition not happen? But it's kind of like talking about, about Santa Claus or something that doesn't exist anymore.
What do you mean anymore? No. Wait a minute. What do you mean anymore?
I'm just saying it's. I don't want to spend my energy on things that are aren't going to come to be.
I totally agree.
I guess we should say spoiler alert. So Sean Tabor's listening and he hears that Santa Claus isn't real. That might devastate him, but Santa Claus is not real.
Hopefully you will.
Neither is Dynamics Marketing yet.
We will insert a warning at the beginning that if you're Sean Tabor, please don't listen to this episode. You might find it distressful. Or if you're under age of 9, right? Please don't listen to this episode. Right. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of waste of energy. And then you find yourself in a situation where people say, this sounds great. So how does it compare to, let's say, Click Dimensions? I say, I have no idea. Feature for feature, I can't compare because I don't know what the feature set is going to be. But more importantly, I have no idea what the price point is going to be. Right.
Well, and you told me you don't believe it exists until you receive an email that somebody sends you through it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, and with the price tag attached to it. So, how much did it cost to send this email? So, this is quite important because my gut feeling. Don't quote me on that. Well, quote me on that if you will. But I suspect that price point will be somewhere above Click Dimensions.
Right, right, because it's got features like event management and other things like that,
and other things that don't include. So, and you did do a post, quite a good post on comparing on a high level what to look for in the marketing tools. Are you the agency? Are you looking to qualify your leads, or just looking, do the mail blast? In which case, like a MailChimp will do for you,
The big thing I didn't realize until I compared Adobe, Click Dimensions, Marketo is one big factor is, are you primarily targeting companies or are you primarily targeting contacts? Because the people that target companies, lead scoring is really important to them. Whereas people who market to consumers, that's where a Marketo or Adobe really shines, because they have a deeper level of profile management, and it's like knowing, predicting what you're going to be interested in as a consumer is a lot more challenging than just lead scoring company X.
Yeah, I suppose it's more frequent transactions of much lower value. We're talking about,
and a lot more potential customers too.
Correct.
If you're marketing a consumer product versus, your product, or something tailored towards businesses like a CRM or AX partner marketing to potential customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So to wrap up my trip impressions, the one thing that I did kind of reflect on during the trip, I stopped in Singapore, and I did manage to present at Tech Summit Singapore. It just coincided. Session was introduced in the morning of the first day. It's a 2-day event, so they put it on a schedule somewhere by mid-morning. And I still managed to get something like 40 people in the room. It was great because Tech Summit is about Microsoft 365. It's about Azure and Dynamics. I believe mine was like the only session purely Dynamics. The other one, I think, was field services, but connected field services, more high level like IoT stuff. We can do this kind of session. We can do this kind of session, right? Mine was about pure Dynamics. portals. And what was pleasing is when I asked who's here, knows Dynamics or works with Dynamics, I had only like four hands going up in the air. So it was a good result. So people came in, people were interested what Dynamics is about, what portals are about. It made session a bit more lightweight because I couldn't just dive in. I had to explain what Dynamics is, what the portals are, how it all fits together. But we'll see what the feedback is going to be. But the one thing I did reflect throughout this session and throughout my travel in Japan is that these are the countries where when you do CRM, it will be multilingual. And chances are it will be with the base language different from English. And if you don't support that, people are just not going to talk to you. In fact, I do training in a lot of countries, and the difficulties I have doing any training in, say, China or Japan, because I don't speak languages, right? So even though comprehension level of students is quite high, they all comprehend English quite nicely. They don't talk back necessarily, and they do prefer native speakers, or at least someone who can converse or keep up in native tongue. So, and definitely when I talk about CRM deployments in Japan or China or in other countries throughout Asia, definitely they're all multilingual, and they're all going for alphabets other than Roman alphabets or Cyrillic alphabets for that matter. So it creates a set of challenges.
Knowing when to bring in the translation files and accounting for the time and who's going to be putting the translations in for the custom fields and messages, that's always an interesting stuff. It's 5 minutes to show how to turn on a language pack, and then it can be sometimes weeks for them to get all the different translations for every option set and everything. I just had a couple of kind of housekeeping items that I wanted to bring up. One is our co-host for the Power BI podcast, Scott Sewell, my colleague, is no longer my colleague. He followed the strategy of talk about people dying in maritime disasters with Power BI, go to conferences, get hired by Microsoft. So apparently that's a strategy. If you want to get hired by Microsoft, go to conferences and talk about people perishing and analyze the data. And anyway, so he is now going to be a global black belt focused on customer service. And since he's going to be focused on customer service, the Power BI he's still going to be doing that, but he thought he probably needs a break from podcasting. So just put in a plug. I'm not going to say who it is, but starting on Wednesday, we're going to have a new co-host for the Power BI podcast.
I can probably
tune in on Wednesday. It's not George, so I'll give you that clue.
That narrows it significantly, right?
And the other kind of housekeeping thing is new year, new project. So we've been doing CRM Tip of the Day for a few years, and we've been doing the short tips, which are great. We're still doing that, but kind of had an itch to kind of steer that into more long-form stuff, and especially because a couple of years ago, those of us on the podcast here did a collaborative book called the CRM Field Guide, which was great, but it was kind of a frustrating experience for me because it just took so long for the content to get published. By the time it got published, it was outdated. And so, I become recently aware that there are really no good Dynamics 365 books. I mean, there's some, but they're, again, outdated. And I think the nature of the fast-changing product is outpacing the ability, if you're publishing a physical book, to keep up with it. So we had the idea, why don't we do kind of a book but do it as a blog? And so we have the site dynamics365book.com that is live now. And the idea is we now have 4 or 5 chapters out there. Now they're not maybe the final chapter, we have a good amount of content to get started. And a strategy is, and what I find missing in like the Microsoft documentation, Microsoft has some really good documentation on the doc site, but they always tell you what you could do, but not why you should do it. And so we're not trying to duplicate that functionality, but rather talk more about strategy, talk about best practices. So like I got the chapter about account management. I talk about strategic account management, how you should segment your customers, different strategies for territory management. Also, they've done a lot to like simplify the forms. And in some ways, they've gone overboard. And there's a lot of great fields that are no longer on the form by default. But the documentation doesn't make it clear that those fields are there. So somebody new to the system, the example I use, find me a good how-to guide about quotes that's recent that applies to Dynamics 365. You really can't do it. So that's the gap we're trying to fill there. And so what I'd like you to do as a listener is go check it out. Follow the site. I'll be publishing new content, and George will be publishing developer content, and some other people, other MVPs and other people will be publishing content. Probably, new chapter every 3 to 4 weeks. And once we get to the point where we have a fairly complete set, we may publish it as a book. We may leave it as a blog. That's kind of TBD. But go check it out. Look at the first three or four or five chapters we got out there. Leave comments, give feedback if there's something you would like to see in it, or you think we're off base in some of our recommendations and you want to argue about that you really should use the lead entity, or something like that. You leave your comments. We'd love to have your feedback. And George, you're working on the developer content. So the idea is, there's
but I have in mind a slightly different spin on the development content, but it all will be revealed very soon. So for now, enjoy. I think, Joel, you put up some interesting content that caused, I believe, some slightly heated discussions on certain topics.
That's right. And the people who disagreed with me were wrong.
Of course, they were. I, on the other hand, will try to steer clear of the contentious topics and focus on how to become a developer, how to become a developer to start with, and how to become a better developer if you are a developer, how to improve if you are a developer, specifically in Dynamics 365. So,
right.
And now that we know more about XRM, that XRM is not going anywhere, it's going to be a foundation of all things combined. That creates an extra boost for the developer community. So I hope to see new apps and new XRM-based scenarios. Remember this advertisement video we had, how many years ago that was, on YouTube? I still like it, where it says the cow management and student management and anything management. Unlimited possibility.
Yeah, I actually put that that's in my introduction to the book, and it's talking about kind of the evolution of CRM to XRM to customer engagement, what that really means. And, a lot of the documentation is focusing on what's new, what's exciting, field service, other stuff. A lot of the newer stuff has really good documentation. A lot of the older stuff, the core application stuff, is kind of long in the tooth. And that's what we're hoping to fill a gap there. So let's talk about some things that have been since our last episode. And Leon, are you with us now? Looks like Leon's still having connection issues. Okay, so the first thing is there was a little brouhaha maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago about the Cortana integration. I already referred to this, but there's been a preview of the Cortana integration really for about a year. I think it was originally CRM in 8.2. The preview was there, and they back in Windows Phone days they had where you could do certain basic commands with Cortana. That basically has gone away, and it was not communicated really gracefully. It kind of was an abrupt, it's not going to be there, and then within a few hours they replaced the announcement with, we're continuing to work to deliver robust experiences and integration with AI assistance, and Cortana will be part of that. That kind of thing.
Well, I'm particularly disappointed. Remember this tip 1000? Right? The development part of Tip 1000, I did have a demo at some point where I had a script, a Twilio script, that would call my phone, that would pick up the call automatically, and then the script would play voice, hi Cortana, and then would play some predefined commands like show my contacts or something like this, right? And I had it working where my computer would wake up, Cortana would wake up, and it would display the list of things and so on and so forth. So it was a great example of automation. Unfortunately, about 2 weeks before our Tip 1000, it's all gone. And when I tried to get to the bottom of this, I got the message saying, this thing, it doesn't work at the moment.
Okay, so here's my opinion, not backed up by anything I know about what's going on behind the scenes here. But my opinion is that not going forward with the Cortana integration and rather going to more of a broad AI approach is a good thing, because the fact is that, well, you can use Cortana on Windows 10. The place that people would most likely do that is in their office. And nobody's going to want to use voice assistant to use CRM inside their office. Can you imagine in an office building with 200 people all talking to their computers and telling Cortana, hey Cortana, whatever, look up an account. You're not going to do that. Hey
Cortana, change my password to A. And now guess what happened? My Cortana on my Windows 10.
Here's the thing: the place that voice assistant makes the most sense is someplace else, such as on your home or off your home voice assistant, like Google Home or the one that starts with an A from Amazon, or on your phone. And the fact that Cortana without Windows Phone doesn't really have a presence in any of those. Sure, they got niche products like the speaker that they have that very few people have purchased, or on there is a Cortana app for iOS and Android. It's a much more limited version. It doesn't have the deep integration with apps like Google Now or Siri does on those phones. So that's really where the voice assistant integration would make sense if I'm in my car or on my phone and want to look something up. So tying it to Cortana, in light of other things that they've done, kind of the if we can't beat them, join them approach with mobile that they've taken, or integrations, that are more standard integrations, where they'll integrate with the leading products to make it work. That's why I think having a Cortana integration really doesn't bring us any value.
But you think it's only that part of the story that caused it to be dropped off? I suspect that sometimes pure technical difficulties cause things to drop out. Remember that it's been never-ending story as far as Outlook client is concerned, which is now deprecated. When something was happening and we complained about it, the backstory quite frequently was that, sorry guys, this is not us, this is Office, blah, 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 changing their API security level, what's not, and it breaks our integration. The same goes for some IE features and so on, so on. So I wonder if there is underlying technical reason why it couldn't continue in the shape or form that it was there. And what you're saying is right, but I'm saying it's like if it's a constant struggle and people can't deliver what they set to deliver, at some point you say, hold on, why are we even struggling with this? And then, no one's going to use it anyway, so why don't we drop it? To me, that sounds like a plausible underlying story. So that there are some technical difficulties, because the first explanation I received when our stuff stopped working, it was in preview, so it's like nothing technically broken because it was in preview, so no guarantee. And when I asked about what happened, they said, there have been some changes from Cortana side.
Yeah, that could be too.
Some
so
integration.
That's where again, it's not I don't see it as a big loss. I think there is a place for integration with assistants like Siri and Alexa and Google and other things like that.
Do you actually? Yeah, in your car. Do you
I don't know what's happened,
Siri?
But the Siri on my iPhone has gotten really undependable lately. Like the Hey Siri kind of thing. I train her, and it doesn't work. And I find usually now it's popping up, of course, because it works when you don't want it to. But I don't find I use it that much. I find it more of a gimmick, and I will use it to ask a question. But that's one thing that comparing them, and Sean included me into this. He got a Google Home device, and that seems of the big three kind of the most conversational of all of them. The others I find leave me frustrated more than anything, other than using Alexa to do specific tasks like turn my lights on and off or play a specific podcast or do that type of thing. I add things to my shopping list so I don't forget to get them when I go to the store.
Well, actually, speaking of all this artificial intelligence stuff, the one thing that we did find useful when traveling to Japan, for people, you've been to Japan, right? So, so that it's one of those countries where even though people do get some basic level of English as part of their education, the penetration of English language is very weak. It's basically Japanese language all around. So they maintain their culture, they maintain their language. So sometimes it's difficult, like you go to good food place where local eat and there will be no English menu and no one will understand what you're saying. So what I did, I downloaded language packs for Microsoft Translator and Google Translator and tried to engage in conversations with locals, and particularly when ordering food and trying to read the instructions for your microwave, because it's all kanji, and you're trying to understand which button heats up your food and which one explodes the nuclear device. So, anyways, so it's really, really helpful, and I found that Microsoft Translator is better at real-time stuff, like conversational. So you start talking and it translates, or you want to listen to someone and get the gist of what's going on. It can translate in real time and does it reasonably well. It may not be because of the severe differences in underlying language structure, let's put it this way. You get the gist of it. So it's not perfect translation, but at least you understand what they talk about.
So did you download the language pack for the translator, right? Before you used that? It wasn't like sending it to the cloud to translate?
No. That allows you to use... that allows you to use it offline. We were online most of the time. Speaking of Wi-Fi in hotels and things like that, in Japan you rent the pocket Wi-Fi device, which gives you, like most places, 120 megabit.
When I went 2 years ago,
up and down,
that was your recommendation to me, and it was faster than my home internet in my pocket. I just used Skype and other things like that. Okay, so the other
the best one was but I wanted to say that the Google one turned out to be better at translating pictures. So when you have instructions or when you have a menu, you scan it and it can translate, and then you scrub with your finger the part that you want to get translated, and it translates it quite well. So written language, you make a snapshot and it does a good translation. The other tool I didn't have a chance to test because I found it quite late, but people rave about it. It's called Prism. It's kind of AI. Again, it's about using AI for recognizing pictures, product? Recognizing text.
Okay.
No, I don't think it is. It's some startup. It does some smart things. For example, you scan a business card and it says, here's the phone number. Would you like to call it, or would you like to add it to your address book? You scan email and say, would you like to create an email, and things like that. So it recognizes objects, faces, can do translation as well. I didn't have a chance to test it, but so far I would say these days, even if you don't speak the language, then traveling with Microsoft Translator and Google Translator actually makes your life much easier. On the other hand, there's some little things are lost, because if I was traveling in Japan, let's say 20 years ago, I would put effort into learning some basics, right? I would spend months learning some basics before traveling, so at least I can, say thank you or order some food that doesn't move when they put it on the table. So these days, we're getting lazy. We're saying, I've got, Microsoft Google Translator, I'll be fine. And you are fine, but you're not making any effort. So one of my resolutions after this trip was, before my next trip to Japan, learn some basic language. So I can get by without using translators.
Good idea. So the other big thing that has happened since our last episode of CRM Audio is the upgrades can be scheduled now. Starting on the 15th, and I went out there and tried it out. You can schedule your upgrade. A couple things that I think are different this time than last time. You can schedule them on a weekend now. So it's not just during the week. If there's a week like a Saturday or Sunday that's available, you can do that, which is good if you're a business that wants it to happen not during the week when everybody's in there, but have it happen over the weekend. That's a nice thing.
Do they give you the time slot? Because typically when we start upgrades, we're saying, hey, look, we'll start 9 p.m. on Friday. Because everyone's off, and it gives us kind of an extra night to play with things.
Don't recall if it let you choose a time. It is you can. Your first date that was available was February 20th, so we're still about a month away from when they start. But you can schedule them, and you can go up to August 20th. So they got a 6-month window there that you can schedule. If you don't schedule it during that time, then you'll be in the running for the next one.
Hold on. Didn't we discuss and we agreed that they will allow scheduling upgrades only when Outlook app is ready, but it's still in preview? Or you reckon by February 20th
I'm
it will get out of preview? What's your bet on this one?
The first service pack or update roll-up or whatever they call them will be out end of January, beginning of February. That'll introduce both the two main missing pieces, which are Outlook app, generally available, and offline mobile. Those are the two pieces that are still in previews.
Hold on, 3 missing pieces. Campaign responses on mobile.
Well, that's never coming. That's just a dream that I have. But as Gus Gonzalez says, nobody wants to do that.
Well,
and that's what I've got to wonder. That's the other question I have about about marketing is what's going to happen to the out-of-the-box campaign responses. I really don't know if the marketing Dynamics 365 for marketing leverages campaign responses and some of the core pieces. But those are the last pieces that still need to be updated. But irrelevant for V9, the two pieces that need to come out, as well as I think just another round of stability updates. It's gotten better. We've noticed updates going out every week, service updates and things like that. But I think rolling it up into the first service pack or the first update roll.
So we're talking about 9.01.
Yeah, that's basically what we're talking about.
9.01. Yeah. So can't wait for that one. So the few things should be fixed by then. What else new?
You did miss our beginning of the year episode. We had to get two people to take your place. We had to have somebody who was a developer who could rant, so we got Daryl, and we had to have someone who was bald, so we got Steve Mordew. So it takes two people to replace one George Sabinski. But you didn't have a chance to give your prediction for Dynamics for 2018. So I wanted to extend that opportunity to you to look in your crystal ball and what do you predict? Beyond what we know with V9 and everything, what's your prediction for when we're at the end of the year? We're going to look back and say that was the big thing.
Well, the big thing, I think. I didn't even think about it. So let me try. I reckon we will go with the features on-prem. So 9.1 probably will have on-prem release. So all the nicest features that happened. As part of that, I do hope that we're going to get custom control framework released as well. So to me, that will be a big shift in the client development. And the other thing, I reckon we're gonna, if it's not gonna get implemented by the end of the year, at least we will get a whiff of it. You know how we get in apps, and more apps?
Yeah.
The days where people bend licenses by taking team and just saying, I'm just gonna use just this tiny little feature. It's just one feature, right? So we're not technically breaking. It's like I'm stealing a gum, so technically I'm not stealing, right? So that's going to come to an end.
So you're predicting that the platform will start enforcing the licensing restrictions.
Yes, and sort of the walls, Chinese walls between apps will start to get erected, so you won't be able to jump cleanly between the apps. So there will be foundation, like contacts, accounts, activities, that will stay as a foundation, so that will go across, and any level of licensing will allow you to do that, to access this information. But once you go into apps, let's consider sales versus customer service. Once you go into opportunities, that's one thing. Once you go into cases, that's another thing, right? So, and you won't be easily bending the licenses left and right. As I said, it's the problem is very complex, but I think we will start getting the some flavor of this separation. So when you will be able to license apps, and rather not entities, but the apps, the functionality of the apps. So I don't know in what shape or form, but it will start to happen.
Okay. So one thing we had on Tip of the Day last week, Scott LaFonte, who co-hosts the At Your Service podcast here, who is one of the best field service people as far as people working with the field service solution. He's formerly worked with Microsoft. He now works with Hitachi. But he wrote a tip for us, kind of a guest tip, about how these new solutions and I guess they're not new solutions anymore, but field service and project service have a lot of JavaScript or plugins involved in the solution, and you want to be really careful about hiding or removing fields from the form, because there's a lot of processes going on and you're likely to cause some errors. So I find that interesting, that moving to the solution where very few new features are being added as core application, and a lot of them are solutions. The good part of that is they're using the same tools that we use to create solutions, to create new modules. But there's a lot of script and plugins and other things that get added through those things that can sometimes be difficult to manage, especially if you want to configure them or extend them quite a bit. So I thought that was quite a good tip.
Yeah, look, hopefully the teams that create field service or PSA solution, they will get on board with the new features. You know that now you can introduce dependencies, and you could declare dependencies earlier, and it's a shame that quite frequently it hasn't been done. But now you can actually introduce explicit dependencies and web resources and things like that. Right. So makes developers' life a bit easier, and I hope that they will do that. And look, honestly, when something like that is developed, I would invest, if I were controlling these apps, I would invest into documenting dependencies.
Yeah.
Right. Because cost of support is, because it's so difficult to measure this cost.
Microsoft should invest in documenting these dependencies?
In documenting, full stop, including dependencies. We know, like you were poking voice of the customer, right? You've seen drop downs with A, B, and C as options.
Yes, I still don't know what option C does.
Exactly. So documenting those things is important, and to me, documenting those dependencies is an important part of the process, because you just shifting your cost to support. From development, you're shifting. It's a different cost center, but you're not avoiding the cost. You probably even blow it up by a factor, because it's easier to document and direct people to that documentation rather than, analyze each case and spend man hours trying to figure out why it's broken, and then, they hidden the field ABC and script depends on that field. It's basically, you're not doing anyone's any favor by not investing in documentation.
Right. And, again, I knowing the people on the Microsoft team who do the documentation and seeing where they're going with the docs site, it's where we're going to end up is going to be, and we're already what we have. I think the configuration documentation they've got on the docs site is top notch. And you got the ability to download a PDF copy. Now you might say it's not as good as the Word copy we had before, but it's coming together. But there's just a lot of stuff there, and they're really anxious to get the feedback. What I would say is, if you do read the documentation and find a gap in it, every page has the thing where you can put a comment. They really do read that. And so if you do find something where you find this is confusing or there's a gap, don't just complain about it. Put a comment in there, and don't be surprised if you hear back from somebody, asking for clarification. Speaking of things that aren't documented, very well, I'm going to put a link in the notes to a recent post on the CRM in the Field blog, which is the Microsoft Field Support blog, which is really good. It's more of a technical type thing rather than just the product team. But
is it the one coming from Fargo?
Yeah, it comes from Fargo, and so they had a post in January that I thought was amazing, because it just happened to correspond with an issue that I was stuck on, which is how do you, with a workflow, automate the changing of the process flow stages? And if, for those of you who don't know, in 8.2 and 9.0, the way process flows worked behind the scenes totally changed. They added the ability to have multiple flows per record, processes per record, and basically have a one-to-many relationship now. As a result, all the old tricks, in 2016 and 8.1 for, automating the change of the stage, like I change this field, I want the stage to jump to stage 3, that didn't work anymore. And so there's an excellent blog that, again, asking the question, even amongst MVPs, nobody could tell me the right answer. Daryl Labar came close. So he told me the trick that you can't go forward, you can't jump forward multiple steps. You have to go forward one at a time. But the piece that I missed is, this is confusing because this is something that is different than the rest of workflows work, where process is now a separate entity. And so if you have a process called sales process, you'll have an actual entity called sales process. And so if you want a change on opportunity to trigger a change in sales process, you've got to have a workflow on the sales process entity that's triggered on change of the parental opportunity record, which to me is, I wish they would add that for every kind of record, where if I could say trigger a workflow on a contact when something on the account changes, first, that capability is only really there for this entity. But once you figure that out, but this is the first real documentation I've seen, and that change happened a year ago with 8.2. So I would say that's required reading for anybody who's a CRM configurator to read.
So let me get this straight. So I was looking at that post and I'm still trying to get my head around. So you triggering the workflow on, let's say, opportunity by changes in the opportunity sales process entity, which is a business process flow defined on the opportunity.
You're close. You have the workflow actually on the business process flow entity.
Correct.
So like if your business, and you have that, but you trigger it on change and then select the field on the related opportunity entity.
That's what I'm saying. So, other way around. Yeah. So effectively my workflow is on opportunity sales process, but I can trigger this workflow by changes on the opportunity itself.
Exactly, and I found some kludgy workarounds to make it work.
You can do it accounts context. You can do it by, there are custom workflow extensions,
right?
One to many.
Yeah.
So you just loop through your context related to an account. You could extend it, write a plugin, or use one of, like Andrei Butenko's workflow tool or some of the GitHub solutions. There's solutions to do that. I'm just saying this is the first out of the box capability to trigger a dependent change based on a parent change. Okay. Yeah.
So again, we'll put the link in that, and so I think that brings us to the end of this episode. So just to summarize, read that article. I'll put in the notes. Tune in on Wednesday to find out who our new Power BI podcast host is. Scott will be there as well,
to hand
passing
over
the torch, if you will. Yeah, pass over the red laces, if you will. And then check out dynamics365book.com. Read what we got out there. Again, it's not going to be enough content to give to your CRM administrator to learn everything they need to know, but there's 4 or 5 chapters there, enough to whet your appetite and give us some feedback. It's still a little rough edges with the navigation between posts, and there's a table of contents, but you'll be able to tell when you go and click the link to see the table of contents where there's a hyperlink. So that way you'll know what content is there, and you'll be brutal with your feedback. If you think we're off base, or you think we're crazy, or whatever, give us your feedback, and it's your chance to be part of a book writing process. So pass us your feedback, and if you do give us some good feedback, once we get enough content and publish something, anybody who reviews it will definitely credit in the credits for the book.